And welcome back. Very somber images there.
I lost for words, you know, while we wept from Hurricane Earl to see what took place back in 1961, October 31st, actually, that was devastating. You know, looking at all the debris that was on there and how it rocked Belize City. Wow. Lost for words, actually.
Absolutely. And, you know, we're grateful that we were able to bring you those images. Not everyone was obviously around to see the storm, but of course, it is still something that lives on in those who had to experience the hurricane itself. We are, of course, shifting gears into our second segment at this time, and we're joined by Fermin Olivera, social worker, who is here to talk about particular research that you did. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Good morning, Fermin. It's always nice to have you with us. We know as long as you come around, very interesting data. Then again, off camera, we were mentioning about some of the data collected back in 2014, if I'm not mistaken, on child sexual abuse in Belize.
Yes.
So from then till now, can you elaborate on some of the data that you've collected and what's going on?
Actually, I did a work for the women's department. They asked me to look at policies and procedures that surrounds the issue of child sexual abuse, from the time a report is made to the time it goes to trial, court disposition, those kinds of things. Looking at the main players, where they are, perception, views, their capacity to discharge, functions, a whole range of kind of like an analysis of the system that is charged with the responsibility to protect children and to seek justice in behalf of children.
So let's talk about this from the beginning. And to be very clear, as you said, the assessment was done in 2012, 2014, sorry, and it was looking at what is in place. So from the point, and this is usually, and I don't know if you have data to reflect this, how many cases are actually reported? Can we start there?
Yeah, we can start there. Let me tell you that the numbers are in the hundreds every year.
Wow.
In the hundreds. And by far, what is noteworthy is that the vast majority, probably 75% or better, of all the reports are made in Belize City of allegations of child sexual abuse. And the 20 or 25% is spread out throughout the country. That is a remarkable statistical piece of information.
Wow.
And we got two sources which confirm the very same scope, right from the court and also from the Department of Human Services.
75%.
Or better, or more.
Wow.
In Belize City alone. So that is something that we must be concerned about. Why is that disparity? Now we can think about a couple of things. Maybe there is more vigilance, maybe there is more police presence, maybe there are more social workers here, many things. But it
could be a better understanding of the issue too.
Could be a better understanding of the issue. And what is clear from other literature is what is reported still. There are many for many reasons why that never get reported.
And that's what I was going to ask, because in your field of work, we know one thing, that when it comes to abuse and assault allegations, there's only a certain percentage that is actually reported.
Right.
There's quite a bit that happens that is never known about or never discussed.
That's correct.
So at what point is the report made? Is it when a child visits, or a parent takes a child to the police station? Is it sometimes they end up in the hospital? Is it at the hospital when a social worker is coming? What constitutes the first report of a child sexual abuse?
There are many points when that is made. Like you rightly said, sometimes for medical conditions, they're taken to the hospital. There's a suspicion of probably child abuse, neglect, or sexual abuse. That report will be made. Many times it's a parent. A parent will maybe assess that some violation has happened, and then they will go to the police. And afterwards, everything kind of kicks in. There is a process of how child sexual abuse matters are dealt with. From if it comes, depending which point it came to, one of the very first things that happens is a medical.
Yes.
And then of course you get the parties involved. There is a protection aspect to this, where this child needs to be protected and to be helped, and also there's a criminal piece. They can go hand in hand. Sometimes one takes precedence over the other. When I say precedence, it moves into the system. Not every case of child sexual abuse is criminally pursued for many reasons. Sometimes the family decides that they don't want to push this, and there are many reasons why this happens. And we're hoping that some of the legislations can change to where so that we can better protect children and seek justice.
You know, this is an extremely sensitive topic to people on a whole. Is there a place, because like you mentioned, while we've got a lot that is being reported, and you mentioned over 100 cases are being reported, you know, in Belize, on a yearly basis, probably in Belize City alone. Is there a particular spot, because people want to know, this is happening above and beyond, and it's just to everybody. This is ridiculous, man. Seriously, is there a particular spot people could go? Because a lot of people are afraid to make mention. They are being threatened by family members, those who are doing this. Is there a particular spot somebody could go, or you know, people they could talk to say, you know what, I really want to say something, but I'm so afraid to?
Well, you know, while there are opportunities, if you want, places where maybe at the school system, that teacher, we are all mandated, social workers are mandated to report child sexual abuse or child abuse. That doesn't seem to be the problem. The problem is an apprehension, a certain fear, certain shames associated with the whole incident or the incidents of child sexual abuse. Many times, let me tell you, it's the very people that are charged with the responsibility. And I'll take some responsibility myself. We know of practicing social workers that hesitate to report child sexual abuse. And the literature is clear as to why.
Why is that?
Well, couple things. One, it's closely related to the affluence of the alleged perpetrator. The more affluent the person is, there's an instant hesitation. Is this true? Is this person doing it? It's like we're more concerned with what the alleged perpetrator stands to lose if this is the case. We prefer to deny. And we sometimes address this from the position that the child may be lying or maybe had a bad dream or some nightmare. And our practice suggests that we must start from the position of believing the child and ruling out that it didn't happen.
That is typically how the function is done, specifically when it comes to child abuse. I think that's a great point to start off with, that one, the mandatory reporting exists in this country. It's excellent. Any person who comes in contact with a child who suspects that the child is a victim of abuse has a legal duty to report. That's the case, right?
Well, the legal duty is for certain professionals, medical professionals, teachers, counselors, social workers are all mandated to report. The other people have like a duty to report. It's a moral, it's a sense of duty to humanity, to your colleagues, to your community that you need to. So, but you're not legally mandated, you know.
So if it's my neighbor, I'm not legally mandated. But if I am teacher and I see signs, I am legally mandated to do so.
Mandated to report.
The law says I must report.
And there are sanctions if you fail to do that.
Similarly, as you pointed out, the practice is, or should be, that no matter what, you believe the child first.
Absolutely. That should be our first operating premise. We address it by believing the child and ruling out possibilities. And let me tell you, do children lie? Yes. It just so happens that when this is so serious that we must come from the position of believing the child. Children just don't make this up on their own. Actually, we as we grow up, we tend to become better liars than children. But yeah, children can lie. But that is never the operating thinking that goes behind any allegation of child sexual abuse.
Now, from the point of the first report, whether a teacher makes a report, a medical professional makes a report, a parent brings in a child to make a report, there are specialized systems that are in place to be able to address this. What is the process?
Well, the process would be it would be followed by either a report to the police or reported to Human Services. And let me just tell you that Human Services has been, the Ministry of Human Development has been the primary driver of those, trying to see that those mechanisms written down, the procedures are, they have been the ones that are really behind this, and the literature shows that the documents coming out from them, not the NCFC, National Committee of Families and Children, over a number of years. So they have really orchestrated and tried to really address the issue of child sexual abuse.
Yeah.
I cannot say that all the other responsible parties have been equally engaged in that process.
Yeah.
And it stands, well, I don't know if it stands to reason, but it shows when you see among the numbers that get reported and the numbers making it to trial are minuscule. If I tell you it's 1%, it's plenty. Wow.
It's less
very
than that.
small.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, you have, say, 250 reports. Maybe of that, maybe 4 or 5 will make it to trial sometime down the road.
What happens though?
Well, this is what I'm saying. You know, there are many reasons why the system, maybe we're not as aggressive enough. There's need for evidence gathering. And let me tell you, one of the biggest downfalls to this is that children are not suitably equipped to navigate the justice system.
Yeah.
You know, it's difficult for them to, because they then need to be expert witnesses.
Yes.
I can tell you, the younger a child is, it's almost, you won't get a conviction because a child cannot articulate and present evidence as is expected of adults.
Let me,
so there's
let me
need
ask
for
a question here, because we have heard, I know UNICEF is on its path to establishing its child-friendly court system.
That's correct, yes.
And a part of it, and we see it, if anybody watches any of those law shows, part of it is documenting the statement. Now, if a 4-year-old comes in and speaks of being sexually abused in any way, is it recorded as a written statement? Is it a video recording? I know we're moving towards the video recording, but what is currently in place? Or is that 4-year-old required to repeat that story over and over and over?
We have gotten better in many areas. The idea of preventing the re-victimization
Yes.
for the victims, that means having to relive that story. We are more sensitive to that now, I think. But yes, I think we have not used the advance in technology that is evident in other places. Costa Rica is an example. Now they have a different legal kind of a structure than us. But the use of evidence gathering and those kinds of things becomes what tells that story. And of course, if you call the bar, the kinds of evidence for conviction is very high. So we can benefit from those advances, and I think we recognize it. It has been a slow process, which I think to me and other concerned colleagues, we're kind of dragging our feet, and it speaks to the issue, how serious are we with protecting children?
Yeah.
You know, we have recognized this, I'll be honest with you, 20 years ago, and still we're dragging our feet as a system to really protect children. The younger you are, the more difficult it is. It's just 1 or 2 cases where, you know.
Can I just say what completely floors me?
Tell me.
When we talk about the number of cases, the number of charges that are actually made based on reports, it means if we are to take for granted that of the 250 cases that are reported, if they're all legitimate, it means all those 250 perpetrators are still out there to continue the problem.
That's what it means, yes.
And that
impunity,
is for me alarming.
Yes, it is.
Well, and it's not a deterrent.
Yeah.
I can almost tell you, and I hesitate to say this, if you have a perpetrator sexually abusing a child, the younger the child is, the chances of him or her being convicted is very small. It's almost a non-issue when it comes to the justice. It's very difficult.
And again,
Because it's difficult to prove.
To prove, yeah.
Oh, okay. Because that would have been my next question. And like you rightly mentioned, it's very alarming to know that less than 1% of the folks who the perpetrators who eventually commit these acts, it's just ridiculous. But and you know what it does as well. It also put in parents' mind, or folks who have been in that situation who want to make a report, to be very reluctant and say, you know what, I don't want to make a report, because even if I do, then there won't be anything that will be happening. Now, what do we do with because poverty is this, it actually brings the family down, and it also causes parents to actually put their child out there to actually get money. What do we do with people like this? And when we find cases like this, how do we deal with it?
Well, there are risk factors. For example, studies have shown that, children that are sexual abused, there are some risk factors that can contribute to this.
Yeah.
Poverty is one of those. Substance abuse in the home is one of those.
Yeah.
Domestic violence in the home is one of those. So there are a number. If a child is disabled or differently able, he or she is at risk factor for
Yes.
sexual abuse. So there are those considerations. What is very clear that we need to have a concerted effort. It's like a dance to get these issues addressed. People must be engaged and on board to play their role and to really drive towards getting convictions, getting justice, and also getting help for that victim.
I'm so grateful you brought that up, because I think, and to be clear, as you said, it is an assessment. It's to see what's in place and what the real picture is when it comes to child sexual abuse. So we have a couple hundred cases reported, and the police is involved. There's an investigation that takes place, maybe not aggressive enough, that's what you're saying, and it is very difficult to prove. You have other complicating factors. At times, most times, a perpetrator is a close person to the family.
Absolutely.
Which means that while the person who perhaps took the child believes the child, not everybody does. What happens in that situation?
It goes further than that, Marlene. I asked a question to all the players in it, and I believe there was none that was less than what was it, 50%, or it was at least 75% or more that clearly expressed throughout the system that there are definitely forces working against them to sabotage the case from the inception. This is
from the families?
From the families or the perpetrators. There are those forces that are trying to either buy out of that justice process. So intimidation, threatening, time delays, strategies, they are all very clear in this sector that it is very real.
Wow.
Reported, including the Crown Councils. I think 50% of them reported that they know that there's real effort towards sabotaging cases.
So paying off the family, painting the child in a bad light.
Or just using strategies to delay the process.
We're here talking data collecting. Let's be out in the open. What's the data right now on men to women in terms of being sexual predators?
Predators, mostly men, and it's true for Belize. Victims, mostly girls and women, but where children are from, mostly girls. By far, it's the biggest group that are victims of child sexual abuse are girls, and the perpetrators are heterosexual males.
Wow.
What happens once a report is made to a perpetrator? What is are they informed that the report is made against them?
They're informed.
Is there a list, maybe internally? Obviously, we don't have a registry for child sex offenders, but is there something internally perhaps documenting whether multiple reports have been made against one predator, or what's the system like in that case?
I think there is some data available. For example, we had a conviction a couple years ago, and this was a repeat offender, and that was taken into consideration. But it speaks to data collection, what is available. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing to hear sometimes you have an offense for another crime, and then somebody found out, but he has an outstanding court charge or some fine 2 years ago, nobody followed it. It speaks to the data that is available and how readily is this it can be accessed, and the new police or what the investigator doing, how much access he has. It tells you that. Now, this is not spelled out, but yes, I think there is some, maybe we can improve that mechanism to see the history, and it takes, and it maybe some technology there. But yes, let me tell you right offhand, and it's probably true for Belize, a sex offender is never caught the first time around. It's very, very clear. And there are different studies that suggest that they're caught maybe later on in their years.
And they usually progress in terms of what they will do.
And the number of children. But a sex predator is never caught the first time around. He makes mistakes, and he's a little bit older. And
or more comfortable.
And sometimes the family, there's a history. A sex predator can can have molested many of the children or family members within that household until somebody gets of age and is protecting the younger ones where a report might be made.
To try and reduce the data in terms of sexual abuse on a whole, as a professional, what do you say? How do we look for sexual abuse in the home? What do you say to a family right now that is watching and saying, you know what, I'm not sure how to detect this in my home? What do you say to a family in terms of detecting?
It's a good question. Well, it comes in many forms. But let me tell you, if you have a child and you see a sudden change in behavior, withdrawal, maybe reversing to a younger state, urinating the bed, you have to be, you have to look for those sudden changes. Yeah. And then you start to, has there been somebody new in the home? And remember that a sexual abuser, a child, will usually be somebody the child knows. Sometimes it's family. So you want to see what are those changes and the behaviors that the child is displaying. That becomes some singular moments that you need to be. The problem is, though, Marlene, and is that people are so busy just trying to make life. They don't have much time to spend. They don't spend much time with their children, knowing them and really connecting with them. And
I don't delve deeper into the issue.
Deeper in it.
One of the things, there's a UNICEF PSA, and I always remember it because I know some people are very uncomfortable with it. Okay. There's an image of a child where they portray the child being very uncomfortable around one other family member. And it is a clear sign. But how many parents pick that up? If your child has an uncle, perhaps that comes around and they just don't want to be left alone with them.
Actually, let me tell you, families make the classic mistake of, go to uncle, whatever. And we'll hinder uncle.
Hug him, even though they're crying.
Pushing the child. We never want to do that. Children need to feel comfortable. And empowerment of children and prevention of these kinds of things starts very early. Children must be heard, must be empowered, must be free to choose if they'll hug, if they'll. Children, but we don't. We tend to push them. This the uncle or
it's respectful. You must hug them, kiss them.
Terrible mistakes we make.
I think one of the things that make a child not want to make mention of what's going on is because they probably are afraid of being whipped. So they're actually afraid of their own parents. So from a standpoint like this, how do you tell a parent in terms of trying to what kind of relationship do you build with a child so as for them to be very comfortable with you?
Well, it's we want to have that kind of trusting relationship. And that starts early, where children must be able to express themselves. You listen to them, you spend time with it. Children will tell you, Children will tell you if you ask them and if that trust is there. And that starts very early.
Yes.
There is no foolproof system. It takes like a village. It takes a collective. Wherever those children, if they go to daycare, if they go to preschool, it takes the system to protect that child, throughout. But I wanted just to shift just a little bit on the perpetrator. We seldom focus on the perpetrator. What might be those reasons why grown men, want to have some sexual activity with a child? And it can be psychological, many things. But I like to think we have a system that I wouldn't say openly, but it's like we make excuses and we must hold people accountable. And it goes with a range of our sexual maybe pathologies that it's out there where we prey on children, if you think about this, I mean, there's a range, and I think because we are in a kind of system that we talk a little bit about the victim. Honestly, we don't know much to protect the victim, and we just keep the perpetrator completely out of the picture. It's a patriarchal.
Or people automatically assume, and it is true to a certain extent, that perpetrators were once victims, and research shows that is possible, but. It's not necessarily the case that all of these perpetrators, some of them are genuinely sick.
genuinely sick, and it's a concept of how we treat the feminine, the women and girls, and it starts there. That they're just objects to be used, abused, subjugated, oppressed, and it starts
from any age.
From any age,
Yeah.
and it's a terrible mindset to have, and it reflects on a system that either is unwilling to really put its best effort out there to protect children, but it's a sad situation. You have so much injustice.
I think one thing that comes to mind immediately, Fermin, when you talk about perpetrators and how we perceive girls and women in society, I know the University of Belize is preparing to get into a anti-street harassment campaign. And I think a good question to ask is, how do we view men telling young girls, children, inappropriate things in the streets? If a girl is 12 years old, 13 years old, 14 years old, she's a child. And if she walks on that street, what are grown men telling her? And that's a great view as to what we think should be allowed. I mean, we have been living with this. I can remember my teenage years. I think experienced it.
It has become almost a cultural norm, expectation, but it is damaging.
Yeah.
It is something that most women put up with it. And there's not much that is done about that kind of exposure, but it takes education, and it's a mindset of respect. It's really a mindset of respecting that you just can't tell anybody anything that comes to your mind, derogatory stuff, and you have these establishments where people drinking. You can ask young girls and women; they hesitate to go there at that time because these men that are drinking think that they can just tell. Imagine your daughter, you can't send her to the store because somebody will, you know what I mean?
The music, what we see on television, all these things actually complements for people to see what they want to see and talk to people how they want to talk to people. Fermin, we know that we have run out of time. We have run out of time. This is definitely a very sensible topic, and we do hope that for one day we could actually get him back to chit chat with us on on a wider scale.
I know. I think to be able to conclude, we know the assessment was done as a part of a larger research. We're grateful that you're here to join us and tell us about what you have found so far. I just have one question that I really think is important, and it has to do with the level of support that's offered to victims of abuse. Are there sufficient, or are there mechanisms in place to help to work with children to work past the emotional scarring? I mean, we've already moved past the point that the conviction, they don't get justice in the courts, but do they get a sense of rebuilding their own selves following becoming a victim of sexual abuse?
Well, let me be honest with you. It's one of those areas that I didn't look into because of time and stuff. But just anecdotally, I think we can do with more restorative, if you want to call it, treatment. I think there is a certain level out there. There are very, very few trained people that can do a good job at this. There's definitely a need. And you know what? The devastating effects on people, they require many times. I want to think that as a clinician myself, as a counselor myself, if you start the treatment very early, you can arrest the long-term effects, those kinds of things. Many people, I'll tell you, Marlene, this is a secret. And the family knows, and it will be years later. Some of them self-medicate, getting into social work. Just people are resilient. People want to be well. Yeah. And I think we can benefit from more treatment opportunities for children. There is a cost. Many times people can't afford it. Well, how are we providing these kinds of things? But it is absolutely necessary that the children that experience this and their families need clear opportunities to recover and to heal from this devastating situation.
So if there's one area from your assessment that you think would need to be prioritized, and it's hard because this is a full scale of issues that have to be addressed when it comes to child sexual abuse, what would you say it is?
To be honest with you, I'll tell you there is a need for rethink and activate people. It's us, it's the community that must agitate and advocate for better services. I have seen things happen overnight. So there is no serious will desire, a collective will to do that. But I think citizens must demand that we protect children better than we do and provide services for them. So the burden comes back on us. We must stop becoming complaining and take excuses for answers. Let me give you an example. We have 3 girls that got burnt in an institution. How important is that? Now I say that because had it been somebody else maybe, had it been at a school in Palote where would this be handled that way? Let me tell you, I hate to think that we put value on people, but we must value all children and to be concerned that their rights are protected, and we must never cease to try champion for justice, and this is an important area, and it lies on us. We need to stop accepting excuses, lame excuses for failure to seek justice and reparative stuff where it is so needed, which is our children.
Well, thank you for coming in and allowing us to see just exactly what is in place in terms of responding to reports of child sexual abuse, and it has given us a lot to think about, and hopefully our viewers as well, and understanding our own role in agitating for the right change.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's right. We want to thank you so very much once again, and very sensitive topic. But coming up in our third segment, one of Belize's idol, a lot of folks look up to this individual. We'll be talking achievements in Mexico. Who? Kaya Kutus. She's coming up next.